This always starts with, my son came home in second grade and said, "Dad, I need something for Black History Month." This is my son, Gerald Shrader.
All right, Gerald.
And that was the beginning of a Black History collection, and it wound up including the Dr. Price material. Of course, I have to share that you all know that his famous saying, I do not care how dark the night, I believe in the coming of the morning. I did, just for your own information, I published a book back in 2014 of some of his letters.
Okay.
When he passed, everybody that was anybody wrote letters of condolence. So I have letters from Meharry, from all these small HBCUs on their letterhead and with their presidents. And the beauty of downloading this is that you can enlarge it and you can actually read the letters.
Okay.
So that's available.
What's the name of the book?
Joseph Charles Price, and it's on Blurb. If you Google on Blurb, I just said this before, but it bears repeating. I connected Joseph Charles Price with a saying by Elbert Hubbard. By the eternal, there is a man whose form should be cast in deathless bronze and the statue placed in every college of the land. It could be not more important. Here is a newspaper article where Frederick Douglass himself in 1893 said of Price, "This is Price's day. Since I have grown old, I was at one time disturbed about the cause of my people on the American platform in leadership and organization. Since the rise of Joseph Charles Price, I dismissed all fears. I am willing to die and leave the race in his hands." That's Frederick Douglass. Okay. This was a newspaper article, and this is where his daughter, this is Cheryl, and his picture. And then, if anybody's interested, I do have a Facebook page for Joseph Charles Price. I also, while I have not done anything with it, I bought the URL for josephcharlesprice.com, and if the school wants it, that can be arranged. And lastly, you see, I wanted to mention Booker T. Washington. This is a lot of people miss this. Booker T. Washington stepped into Joseph Charles Price's shoes. Had he not passed at 39, we would be talking about Livingstone, not Tuskegee. Okay? And that's just one of those rare things. Now, when I did find this, Herb White, who has the Charlotte Post, did an article. So there was some interest at that time, but then it dissipated. So I hope it has been a blessing for me. If that one person in history you can meet, God let it be Joseph Charles Price. Yeah. So, but it came to me that this is where it belongs. You can sell it, and I've tried to sell it, and it just didn't work. So this is where it belongs, and I'm glad it's home.
But you need to tell us how you found it and everything. You need to tell everybody.
I was at an estate sale, and this may be a little problematic, but I was at an estate sale or a yard sale, and they had two pieces. I said, "Do you have any more?" He said, "Yeah." He said, Marvin Krieger was a history professor. Back then they didn't have Black history, they just had history. He was a history professor at CPCC, and when he passed, his children hired someone to throw everything in his house on the trash. Everything. And so I said, "Do you have any more of these Charles Price things?" He said, "Yeah." I worked with that man for 6 weeks, and we loaded garbage, 42-gallon garbage bags full of Black history stuff. And he said, at the end, "Can't pay you, but you can have that stuff." Win. So that's how I wound up with it.
Wow.
And then over time, We would put things in the Cornelius Elementary School, Kit School down in Charlotte. We put it there 1 year for a month. And so it's been a celebration of Black history. And then this had to be separated out. I sold off the Black History book collection. I have some things that I have to do this. In 1993, a guy in California cast the hands of celebrities. And I said, I could use a couple of those for my Black History collection. So I have Ray Charles's hands. They only made one set, okay? And there was a business card signed, there's a picture with him and his hands in the mold. Now I get crazy ideas. The United Negro College Fund. What if they give premium prizes every year for donations? What if you made 1,000 copies, which you can do, I checked into it, you can do that. What if you made 1,000 copies and you gave those for a $1,000 donation? You'd raise $1 billion for just that one set of hands for that 1 year. I also have Quincy Jones, Whoopi Goldberg. I have 10 well-known African Americans. That's $10 million you could raise. Unfortunately, they won't do that. The college fund can't do that. They have to have someone else do it and give it to them.
Okay.
So, which I don't have the funds to do that, but it's available, and I have it sitting in the closet at home. So, it's an ongoing thing, but this finally is where it belongs, and so I'm pleased with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Butler, we want to honor you.
Mr. Almond, you're supposed to talk about some stuff that's going on
Well,
first.
okay, I'll do that first. All right. As Mr. Johnson said, I sort of fell into the role of curator and archivist for Heritage Hall, and it is an honor and privilege. I'm humbled every day when I come into this building, and as I open up the vast treasure we are sitting on in this building, and also there are 2 more off-site storage units full of more artifacts, documents, ephemera, that we're just waiting on improvements in this building before they can be brought back. But when I and my coworkers met with Mr. Butler, and I started first seeing all of these letters and documents he had collected, and this is just a small portion of what we have. One of the things I want to say about this collection, in this first case, we have Dr. Price's handwritten notes of a particular speech he was working on. And then I realized that we had the more finalized typewritten copy of the speech with his handwritten corrections. And it's all on Livingstone College stationery. So you'll be able to see one of them because he would type primarily on the back side, but in one part he typed on the front side. Plus there are, Mr. Butler managed to find copies or find original tickets to his lectures in England. So they're on display here, as well as some photographs. The other case has letters that Dr. Price wrote to his wife, Jenny. He wrote to her, there's one binder that Mr. Butler provided. It is nothing but letters by Dr. Price, and he loved her. And you get you get the personal, the other part of this amazing man. In fact, as I've been reading his letters and transcribing them, the one word that comes to mind is genius. This man was nothing but a genius, and passionate and compassionate. And as Mr. Butler mentioned, I have a small part of some of the letters that were written as condolence letters to his wife, his widow, after he passed. And he left us way too young, at the age of 39. dying from a form of kidney disease that is now treatable today. Another thing I want to mention about I deliberately set this up in our lower light area because as I have been finding, any materials related to African American culture prior to 1920, they're rare, hard to find, and to have something in this, as good a condition as they are in, this is a treasure. I cannot emphasize this enough. And long-term, my job is to see these properly curated, properly preserved, and eventually we want to digitize them so that they will be available for all people, researchers, historians, so we can continue to preserve and protect this history, because there are, of course, unfortunately, people today who want to silence this. And I want to reference that and show how contemporary Dr. Price is still today. The particular speech here is titled, "What Can the Negro Be Expected to Do for Himself During the Last Decade of the Century?" Of course, referring to the latter part of the 19th century. There was a movement post the American Civil War among many in the South that they needed to deal with the Negro problem. And their solution was to deport or expatriate all of the now emancipated former enslaved peoples back to Africa. Dr. Price was having none of it. And in his speech, he uses his powerful oratory ability and his words to counter that argument, especially against a gentleman named Carlisle McKinney, who was a former Confederate soldier, and he was a newspaper editor for the Charleston News and Courier. And he had written a book called An Appeal to Pharaoh, basically referencing back to Exodus and the Old Testament, that the only way to solve the Negro problem was to send all of the emancipated peoples back to Africa. And you will see in one of these passages where Dr. Price directly responds to Mr. McKinney. And with that, I want to give this presentation on behalf of the
Library
library.
staff.